Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and we've got another return on investment video for everybody. We're going to be looking at Dr. Aphra and Starkiller. These are two characters that are actually very unique in Galaxy of Heroes because they have the exact same requirements. They each are 4 Relic 5 characters, which makes them a very unique study for this kind of return on investment because you can kind of deep dive a little bit more into what they offer, what they bring to the table, and what their recs do for you. So we're going to get right in, but first and foremost, got to give a huge shout out to my channel members. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. If you're interested in joining, click that link down below. Otherwise, all I can ask of you guys is please just subscribe to this channel, leave a like, leave a comment, let me know your thoughts down below. So before we get into their player cards, I did want to at least mention a couple of things about these characters. One of them being that Starkiller is my favorite Legends character. If you haven't really been in the Discord as much, I love Starkiller. I played The Force Unleashed and The Force Unleashed 2 way too much. And I even read both books multiple times because I just fell in love with this character through that game. It was a very sad moment for me when Rogue One came out. And it kind of, in my mind, that was the decanonization of Starkiller. That, Rogue One was there. Darn it, that's not the way they found out about the Death Star, the plans, everything. So, Force Unleashed is a great game. I won't spoil anything, but it is an awesome game. I really love it. So I did want to mention that before we go down here, because what I want to look at first is the fact of the Cantina farming for these characters. So Starkiller has 3 characters in the Cantina, which a lot of people love to say, oh, that makes him so good. Again, you guys know that I actually say that having things in the Cantina is bad because it takes away from your signal data farming. So Starkiller has 2 16 energy nodes in Darth Talon here, and Dash Rendar, and a 12 energy node in Kal Katarn. Whereas Dr. Aphra has Sana and Hondo, who are both in Cantina, on 8 energy nodes. These 2 characters are not yet accelerated, right? But we're not accelerated yet for Sana. So to put this in perspective of just how much better an 8 energy node is, you can farm Sana and Darth Talon in the exact same period of time. While you're getting double the rewards for Darth Talon, you're only spending half as much energy on Sana. Same thing with Dash and Hondo, and then you'd still have to go do Kyle. When Hondo and Sana get accelerated, again, drop rate's the same for each of these, right? Just, in a vacuum. In the time frame that you would get Hondo and Sana when they're accelerated is the time frame that you would get either Darth Talon or Dash Rendar. So a lot less time in the Cantina for Dr. Aphra. It's worth mentioning there. Now on the flip side, Dr. Aphra has 2 hard nodes in BT1 and Trip 0. Now, they're not accelerated yet, so they're a lot harder to farm, where Mara Jade's on a 16 energy node and is accelerated. Here's where I'm going to make a point here that if you refresh BT1 and Trip 0, you refresh each of their nodes, you spend 50 crystals, and you end up expending a total of 240 energy, right? 60 for each of them, 120, multiply that by 2, 240. That same 240 energy could get you 75, if you spend the 75 crystals, so 25 more crystals, but you get to do Mara Jade's node 3 times. So it is going to be a lot easier to get Mara Jade more quickly and obtain other things because you're not going to be spending as much energy as you will with BT1 and Trip 0. So that is that's a big deal, right? That does play a role over a period of time that you can kind of weigh that as to which one you like here. In the Cantina, it's not even a competition. That Aphra, you're going to spend a lot less time in Cantina because these guys are on just such lower energy nodes, especially if you're going to end up waiting until they're accelerated. And that's one of the big things that I've been waiting for to kind of go for these characters. So I did want to at least show these because this should play a factor in you deciding of how you want to farm them. So now what we're going to do is we're going to dive in to my, I'm going to dive right in here to the player cards. So here you can see we've got Starkiller and we've got Dr. Aphra's player cards. You guys can see that I have Starkiller 1 power overall higher than Aphra. We'll explain this, we'll get into it. So first, let's start with the PvE. So Starkiller taking a nosedive in PvE. Unfortunately with Starkiller, our big issue here is that his Omicrons are heavily, that his performance is heavily influenced on his ability to assist certain characters in PvP game modes, and that's not the case in PvE. That's not to say there's still not a lot of really good ways to use Starkiller. I use him with Lord Vader a lot in Conquest. I've done it with other characters in territory battles. You can even make the team that you would use in GAC or Territory Wars and use them in the new Rise of the Empire territory battle. But again, he's not the same, right? I cannot mark Starkiller high because he is not the same in PvE as he is in PvP. Where Dr. Aphra, she does really well in PvE. She's not completely reliant on those Omicrons to still be a solid character. Now, where she kind of misses out a little bit is in the PvP category. Now, just kind of finishing off her PvE point, her team is very easy to use, and the fact that you can use it in Geonosis territory battles, like you could use it on a dark side node, where you cannot do that with Starkiller. Starkiller, to really take full advantage of him, needs to be on a mixed node so he can get the Jedi, light side unaligned Force user inside of his team. So, that is a factor playing in there. Now, PvP, Dr. Aphra is going to take a little bit of a nosedive here. And that is due to the fact that her Omicrons are only for 5v5. In 3v3, you need to go equip different Omicrons on the murder droids that aren't nearly as effective as what her stuff is in 5v5. So, in my personal opinion, she loses value there. Right? She automatically loses value because those Omicrons aren't active in 5v5, in 3v3. And also, she doesn't really have a unit that lifts her in Territory Wars. Whereas Starkiller, he has Jihani Omicron in Territory Wars, the Mara Jade Omicron in Territory Wars, both really help that Starkiller team. And I'd be remiss if I didn't include them because, again, we've kind of been including some of those things like, oh yeah, you know what? We're going to assume you have the best team possible to take advantage of these characters. So that's where I'm giving Starkiller that bump, is the Territory War aspect, and I think even more importantly, in GAC, that 5v5 and 3v3 almost seamless transition of teams, to me, really makes Starkiller a much more valuable PvP character. Gear, they both get a 71. I think that's fair. Some of you may say that's a bit generous, but it's only 4 characters. They do require Kyrotex, and it is Relic 5, but it's 4 characters. It's not a lot of gear that you have to expend. And if I was to compare this to like the General Skywalker farm, just for the sake of argument, you need to gear up not only the 10 characters you need for the ground missions, but you need your Negotiator Galactic Republic fleet at least above 40,000 galactic power. So there's a lot of additional gear in the General Skywalker because there's more characters. And most likely you're going to be relicking 4 or more characters for that farm. So I did just want to mention that if you see that, remember the General Skywalker video, why these are closer, simply because there's not nearly as many characters you need to be gearing and putting resources into. So next we have Rex, and you'll notice that I have Starkiller 5 above Dr. Aphra, which might be a bit controversial, so I'll explain Dr. Aphra's first. BT1 and Trip 0 go with her, and they have to go with her, which is great. But before you get Dr. Aphra, they do not have nearly as many uses. They kind of need Dr. Aphra to get the most out of their kit. Sana, she has some, really good synergy with some rebel teams. The thing to keep in mind with Sana though is that core members of her team are Cara Dune and Stormtrooper Han. So if you don't have those 2 characters, you're really missing out on a big part of her kit. And then Hondo kind of needs that. He's good, right? He can do some solo things. He can do some wacky stuff. But really with Hondo, you want that leadership of like a Dash Rendar or Beskar Mando. So while they're good characters, they need a lot of extra work and almost like full other teams built for them. Now with Starkiller, you could make that same argument, but I'm going to explain it in a way that makes a lot more sense. So first we'll start with Mara Jade. She slots right into an Empire team with Emperor Palpatine, who is a very easy character to obtain. Everybody's going to have them. So, very easy to take advantage of Mara Jade. Kyle Katarn is a rebel fighter, a rebel, and a Jedi. He's got very, very lucrative tags. And so, in my opinion, where he really plays a solid role is that you can put him into any team and he's going to do solid. Heck, he even helps you complete the Starkiller requirements if you need a Jedi. I know he's not a Jedi tank, but he's at least still a Jedi, so that works. And then finally, I guess not finally, then you have Dash Rendar. Now, Dash is probably early on the weakest of the Starkiller team, only because you won't have the team to take advantage of him. Him and Sana, to me, kind of are in that same boat of you really need that team to take advantage of them. But the argument with Dash is that he is a very good pilot, And in 3v3, a lot of players will use Dash, Han, and Chewie as a solid team. And, that's a very good team. So I did want to at least call that out, that's why these Rex are they're all very, very good characters. And then finally, Darth Talon, who I think she got a lot of hate when she was released. I'm going to argue that Darth Talon is one of the best requirements out of the Starkiller group. Like, she's the second best requirement in my opinion. I think Mara Jade still takes the cake, but Darth Talon slots into any Sith team and makes them better. The Sith Triumvirate, Sith Empire with, Darth Revan, with Malgus. You could throw her with Sith Eternal. Like, she just has so much viability in this game as a great, just unique character. And she has a lot, her and Mara Jade both have very good low gear viability. Because for Darth Talon, it's her unique. And for Mara Jade, it's get her fast and she's going to get the turn meter train rolling. So I think Starkiller's Rex are a bit better for that reason. But I think both of these characters have fantastic requirements. Like, there's not any real duds. Because once you do get Dr. Aphra, BT1 and Trip 0, bump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket. Now, overlap for Dr. Aphra, she has no overlap. None of the Rex you get for her will help you get anything else in the game. Right? They don't get you anywhere. Starkiller, Dash Rendar is required for Profundity, and you do need the Outrider for Jabba the Hutt as well. So I think that's a really important note there, is that Starkiller, there is a requirement there. It's not a lot of overlap, but it is better than 0, right? It is better than 0. Now, finally, we've got flexibility here. And when comparing these two characters, where I called out the flexibility is the fact that Aphra is kind of stuck with like Darth Vader, Darkside droids, and if you really wanted Chrysanthemum, which shouldn't happen. So it's really Darth Vader and Darkside droids. Starkiller has a lot of flexibility because, yes, there's the generally accepted team, which is Emperor Palpatine, Mara Jade, Starkiller, Old Ben, and then like Visas Mar, right? That's probably the most common team. But I say that, and then I'm like, oh, well, people can use Juhani, or they're going to use, I've seen Barriss or Plo Koon, and hey, instead of Visas Mar, I'm going to use Ben Solo or Cal Kestis or Stick Ray, or there's a lot of options you have with Starkiller, and I think in 3v3 especially, he kind of transforms into this. Well, I could use Darth Vader lead, I could use Savaja Press lead, I could use Kylo Ren Unmasked and Sith Trooper. Like, there's a lot of ways that these characters get really, really good. That he has that flexibility to kind of really mix and mash his team to a specific counter, where Dr. Aphra, I just don't think has that. So what's going to warrant Starkiller at an 89 and Aphra at an 88? I know this is going to be the big question here. It's the combination of the fact that in PvP, right, if I just look at the PvP number, Aphra has a hard counter. Even with her Omicrons, Commander Luke Skywalker, Han Solo are a hard counter to her. Just a hard counter. Like, they really cause, it's a really funny. If you look at Dr. Aphra on Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes.gg, she has a much lower win rate than Starkiller does. But if you look, it's because CLS has such a high win rate. So there's a hard counter to Aphra. Whereas Starkiller, there's a lot more of that like off-meta teams that can beat him, but they have much lower win percentages. I like Commander Luke or General Grievous teams. You've got your stuff like Imperial Troopers with Wat Tambor, or just Imperial Troopers. There are some teams that can handle Starkiller, but there's RNG involved. So it's one of those where I think these characters are kind of both better on offense. But if you are going to place one on defense, I feel Starkiller is much more bang for your buck, because you have a much better chance of clearing Starkiller than you do Dr. Aphra. So that's my return on investment here for Starkiller and Dr. Aphra. As you can see, I think Starkiller kind of is a better return on your investment if you haven't picked up on that yet. That really is just coming into play that he does have overlap, right, with Dash Rendar. He is a lot more flexible in that 3v3. And I think that in reality, most of us are looking at these characters from a PvP perspective. That the PvE is really nice, and Aphra does have combat missions in Rise of the Empire, which is helping her numbers. But I think that for Starkiller, giving yourself that Dash Rendar to use later on down the road, the flexibility of how to use him, and the ability to play some offense or defense, to me, makes him a far better return on your investment than Aphra. That's not to say Aphra isn't a great character. I think she's very good. I think they both are, solid, and I would really love if I could get Dr. Aphra. As I've said a lot of times, what's kept me from that is just the Cantina farming for Sana and Hondo, which is crazy because I have Starkiller, but when I did get Starkiller, that was a very, very passion-driven project because of how much I love that character. So that's the video, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if you think I got these right or got these wrong. As always, smash that subscribe button. Leave your likes, leave your comments. I love all you. May the force be with you, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.